Hey guys, Kyle here. So, just before the show starts, I wanted to mention our Patreon. You can pay us $1 a month as a thank you, as a tip. You can pay $2 a month to get access to one of our bonus content shows, episodes 2 days early, and a secret Discord chat where all of our Patreon donors get to go and hang out and talk with us directly. Then there's a $5 tier that you can donate to get access to a whole bunch more content. We have multiple bonus episodes on there. So please check it out. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. We don't advertise, we don't make money. So check it out and throw some money if you think that would be cool. Thanks. Welcome to It Gets Weird, our comedy show where we explore the unusual, the unbelievable, and the unexplained to try and make your world a little weirder. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Niall, and I'm back here again with a fucking hot one.
Okay.
I made the mistake of looking at my phone's fucking, because I don't know if this is fully apparent in the podcast lore, but I work from home, so like I sometimes I don't like go outside.
Niall, everybody knows you work from home. This has been very well established.
Okay.
People in the Discord and email are always talking about, oh, Niall's working from home again, huh? And everybody's like, yeah, big surprise, working from home.
Oh, look, it's a great thing. It's a great thing if you can get it. So,
everybody loves it and everybody talks about it all the time. So that's what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah, but I looked at my phone. I got a weather app notification, and it said 95 degrees.
Nice.
And that,
like the boy band?
Yeah, that's 98 degrees and rising. But my brother had that CD when we were children. I remember holding it. It's like
good one, huh?
Not a good one. No, 98 degrees. Even if you like, there are certain. I don't like a lot of like 90s boy band stuff as like listening, and it wouldn't not something that I would listen to, but I can understand a level of craft to it, you know. Mm-hmm. 98 degrees wasn't the best one.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway,
they're no NSYNC or Backstreet Boys.
Yeah. Despite as a child liking Backstreet Boys, I think NSYNC were technically the best of them. So
I liked them for some reason when I was a small child.
Well, because that's because you were a small child and you didn't.
Yeah, I guess that's
like it's one of those things that. Do you ever just think about like the fact that at one point you didn't have taste?
Yes,
like not good, not bad. You just like took in whatever.
I went from NSYNC and Backstreet Boys to, and like things that would have been in that exact vein, like Britney Spears, but I didn't listen to Britney Spears because that's for girls, right?
Yeah. At that point, it was that simple. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, exactly. So but I went from that to Weird Al to then learning that the Beatles exist. That was like my trajectory. So yeah, I definitely did not have taste when I was listening to NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. Probably didn't have taste when I was listening to Weird Al. I just thought he was really funny. But
yeah, I mean, look, Weird Al may be palatable because it's doing pop songs and stuff a lot of the time. But like, there's something there, Yeah,
it's
worth the time.
Sorry, you were saying some bullshit about 95 degrees or whatever?
Oh, this actually is a better discussion than what I was saying. I was just like, we're getting to that point of the time where it's hot and I don't have like central air.
Oh.
And so it's and I record in the warmest room in the house. So it's now we're getting to that point where when I'm trying to think of what is going through my brain as you're doing the intro and I don't know what I'm going to say. A lot of times it ends up being temperature related. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think, though, steering away from that, I mean, occasionally doing like a temperature check, that could be good. I don't really see a problem with that. I do find it a little, it's surprising that you said you take umbrage with recording in the hottest room of the house, just given that that's your favorite Law Dispute album. But that's besides the point. We can music discussion. We can incorporate the. I managed to bring the boy band thing into it. Go to music. Like I think that all works out ultimately. So that's okay. I guess what I'm saying is I won't chastise you for bringing up how hot it is, how fucked up it is to to record in the heat.
I mean, hey,
I will ask that you don't do it again. But
hey, if people don't like that, we can go back to talking about you can go back to talking about driving.
Oh shit, I won't do that. Although I do have a whole story I could tell right now about.
Oh, I know you always
driving. But guess what? I'm not going to do it. I'll save that for the Patreon bonus episode.
Yeah,
everybody can check that out there. We have a little email today.
All right.
Smuggled into my inbox just this morning, 3 a.m. More impotent than important. Let me read it now verbatim.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a line from the Drones' song, Why Write a Letter That You'll Never Send? But this letter was sent. I'm sorry, the music theme, I've been thinking about music a lot lately. I should say we just started a thing where we have like a music league with this app that you can vote on thematic music on a playlist. And I've just been thinking, I've been deep in the tank about music lately, and that's just where my head is at. So
fair.
Now I will be interested in getting your reaction to this. To kick this off, I will say this email is a direct result of, I think, some bullshit I said a couple episodes. So this is my fault.
Oh, fantastic.
This
Let's see if I even remember what you said.
This email is from Tom, and the title is Flattening Fetish.
Okay, yeah, I do remember what you said. That it comes out pretty quickly, yeah.
It says, hey, I'm a 37-year-old guy, and I actually have a flattening fetish. It is not as common as the inflation fetish, but there are many of us out there that are into it. Most of us have discussed where we think the flattening fetish originates from, and for most, including myself, it was where Judge Doom gets flattened by the steamroller and stands up all wobbly and flat like paper in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
All right.
Okay. I forget what the one that I was talking... Oh, I was talking about Newman from Space Jam.
Yeah.
That's not his real name. I keep calling him Newman. What's that guy's name?
I don't fucking know.
Okay, he's Newman. Then when the dude jumps out the window and gets flattened in The Mask.
Yep.
And then finally Stan gets flattened and inflated in Space Jam. Oh, it's a twofer in Space Jam. I didn't even realize.
Oh, first one, then the other.
It's a fucking 2-for-1 deal. Because that's right, he does get flattened, and then one of the cartoons...
They blow him up like a balloon.
Yeah, like Daffy blows him up like a balloon. Others remember superhero flattening scenes from old comic books and cartoons. I think it's the idea of being turned into something so unbelievable and impossible in real life, and the embarrassment and surprise of it, if it was to actually happen, that is a turn on. Also, being able to get flattened and rolled up or folded by someone and carried away or stuck on a wall flat like a poster, unable to move, sounds fun. Okay, right. I can see. Okay, it's starting to make sense.
Get flattened, folded up like a letter, and mailed through the U.S. Postal Service.
Many people into the flattening fetish will write stories or make photo edits to satisfy their fantasies. AI now makes it so much easier to get flattened. Ha ha ha. I attached a couple photos I edited of myself flattened by a steamroller. I'm going to not be sharing those. No offense, Tom. These are very not safe for work. I don't need, let me put it this way. I don't need to be putting these out there so that, people are getting horned up from our podcast. That's not really the vibe we go for. And then this is the part that I'm so curious. The email ends with, by the way, I found your show by searching flattening fetish, and it popped up from your episode transcript. I also love the topic of the unexplained and mysteries and UFOs, so I'm going to stay tuned. Hope this answers your question. Let me know if you have more questions. So,
hey, first of all, I want to just blanket state, like, the biggest props to you for writing this email and being as honest and open about this as you are, because that is fucking cool.
No, huge props. Please, I love that you're willing to talk about this with us, because I'm actually, I think I said this in the other episode, genuinely interested in understanding. Like, I'm sorry, I have a tendency to giggle because it's, sex and stuff, but like,
because you're a prude. I get it, yeah.
Yeah, that's right, Niall. I'm a prude. That's why I'm always talking about fucking coming and sucking and fucking and like getting flattened by a steamroller sexual style or like inflated sexual style by Rouge the Bat. That's why I'm such a fucking prude. That's why I talk about that shit all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, so this I mean, look, I genuinely am interested. So I appreciate you reaching out and letting us know about that, because I had no idea. I honestly, though, I realize now I should have thought of Judge Doom.
Yeah.
But to me, Judge Doom is so fucking scary as a kid that I wouldn't immediately associate it with the seed that's planted for later in life. You know what I mean? Like, at least to me, he was just really like, scary.
I feel like, but that is an interesting cross section of like, being scared making you horny and flattening. Like that, there's not for you specifically, but for someone else, that could be a double whammy of like wanting to be like monster fuckery kind of stuff, maybe a little bit. So here's okay.
That's a good point. You make a good point.
Yeah, and like you just aren't like getting your rocks off by being terrified of the unknown or something. You know, like there's just like a fetish that's missing there other than the flattening. But like, so what the thing that this brings up in my brain is that if we're taking this guy at his word, and I have no idea why we wouldn't,
sure.
We just got a new podcast listener because we discussed an obscure fetish.
That is so true.
So what I'm proposing is what other things could we mention that could get put in a podcast transcript that would then get someone to search an obscure fetish and find our podcast. So I think this is an untapped market.
That is a great point. And as somebody who has been online long enough and deep enough to know some online lore about fetish stuff that's famous on the internet. Mm-hmm. I have to say this. I don't want the Wonder Bread guy finding us. The guy who, because I think that he has some pretty bad beliefs. I just don't need him to find us. I do,
but however, other people with other bakery themed fetishes are welcome as long as you're not
as long as you're not like a piece of shit. A blanket statement: pieces of shit are not welcome here. But I will say, I would really love. I wish Garrett was here to help, but you've heard us talk about this for sure. I want the fucking neurosurgeon who commissioned all that Macro Falco artwork to.
Oh, so I've heard this so many times. I'm well aware.
I want the Macro Falco guy who gets all the giant fetish of Falco from Star Fox artwork commissioned, who is rumored to be like a neurosurgeon or something like that. I want that person to listen to our show. I would love for that person specifically to email us. So hopefully, these AI fucking transcripts that are being, pumped out.
Where did someone find a transcript of our show? I have no idea.
We did not do that. If that's out there, that has nothing to do with us. But maybe the transcript will pick up Macro Falco and we'll get that guy, because God knows that this person's the main person searching that on the Googles and the DuckDuckGos and whatnot. So
do you think somebody with that specific of a fetish would just have like a Google alert set up for any time it's mentioned?
They could. I mean, look, they're a neurosurgeon. They could probably develop some sort of bot that does that. Like, internet. The robots.txt or whatever picked up a new mention of Macro Falco, a fresh mention of Macro Falco. It's possible. So thank you, Tom. Niall, I will share these flattening images with you privately, and we can discuss them and together.
We'll take that off air.
But hey, Tom, I got to tell you, these are great. I'm not sharing them, and I think ultimately that's actually just about your privacy. But again, thank you for sharing, because
also just like I don't want to share obscure pornography that then someone would get excited to see and then try to talk to me about it, and I would just have to be like, yeah, I'm not really into it. Someone sent it to me for my podcast. That's just like a weird discussion to have.
Oh no, I'm not into the fetish pornography. This was fan mail.
Yeah, exactly. Not a fetish, just fan mail.
Oh, that's a great start to this episode. I feel so energized.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Now, Niall, to the serious business. Okay.
Yeah. What's up?
I know we usually do the grab bag episode stuff with cryptids, right?
Yeah. Are you breaking new ground this week?
Well, it's not new ground because we've done this before, but I feel like it's been a while since I've done a grab bag of UFO stuff.
Okay.
Because I had been looking around, I've been reorienting my mind in the direction of UFOs. And I would recommend everybody out there do the same thing, by the way.
Yeah, align yourself with the correct dimensional energies
Yes.
To contact UFOs.
And so I found some stories. Well, let me put it this way. I was on UFOcasebook.com, which is a great site.
Yep.
And I got curious about the data surrounding abductions. Now, I don't think that UFO Casebook is what's the word? Complete. I don't think it has. It's
not exhaustive.
Exhaustive. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. It's not an exhaustive list of UFO cases, but I did notice that there are so many less abductions than there are just UFO witnesses. But what I found is that it looked to me like the highest concentration of abduction cases that are at least aggregated on this site are 70s, 80s.
Sure, that makes sense.
Which makes a lot of sense. So I was just thinking, I wanted to find a couple UFO abduction cases that I hadn't heard of, span a pretty wide range of time and a couple different locations. And so I went and did that, and I found us 3 stories that I thought were very interesting. So here we go.
Okay.
So August 7th, 1968. This is at Buff Ledge Camp in Vermont. And this is a...
That just sounds like you're kind of douchily abbreviating something.
Oh.
Buff Ledge Camp.
Buff Ledge Camp are 3 disparate words in this. So Buff Ledge, which is, I would have thought of as maybe like some sort of buff men's retreat is what I would have thought. But it's an all young girls camp.
Okay.
And this is north of Burlington on Lake Champlain, which I do believe Lake Champlain is that not where Champ, the United States' own Loch Ness monster, is located? Am I remembering that correctly?
So. I believe that's right.
So this is a girls' camp, right? And there are these 2 camp employees. One of them is a 16-year-old maintenance boy named Michael Lapp. And then there is a 19-year-old water ski instructor named Janet Cornell. And the story goes that on that fateful day in August in 1968, they're hanging out by a boat dock, and there's not a lot that they have to do right now. They're kind of just chilling. And the swim team that is at this camp has to make a trip to Burlington to meet for a competition. And so because of that, the camp was pretty empty. There weren't a lot of people around. Just presumably some of these people who worked at the camp were about, but the swim team was just gone. All the girls are gone. So it's in the late afternoon, and Michael Lapp and Janet Cornell, they are both, I guess, friends from working together at this place. And they're just hanging out, watching the sun setting. And as the sun sets, they notice a bright light appear in the sky, which is growing darker by the minute. Now, I like this because Michael's like, oh, we're seeing Venus. This is we're getting a show from Venus, which instantly makes me anytime Venus gets misattributed as a UFO sighting and people say it's Venus, I every single time think of Jose Chung's From Outer Space, where Jesse the Body Ventura dressed as a Man in Black is like, your scientific illiteracy makes me sick, makes me shudder. It makes me think of that because he says something about your President James Earl Carter Jr. thought he saw a UFO, but it was known that all he really saw was the planet Venus.
Wow.
That his voice is in my mind every time. I've watched that episode like a dozen times.
He's fucking going after you like when he saw someone walk out of the cage on a cage match. Did you hear about that?
Good. No.
They brought back Jesse the Body Ventura to do commentary for a Saturday Night's Main Event show recently.
This recently? This was recently?
Yeah, this was 3 weeks ago, something like that. And he obviously has not watched the product in the last however many years.
Oh boy.
And so when I think it was Damian Priest or some shit won the match by opening the door and walking out the cage, he just started railing at started just yelling at everybody and was like, back in my day, you should have at least climbed over the top like we had to. You can just win this thing by leaving the cage through the door. What is this? It was really funny.
That's so funny. Presumably that was a little bit of a shoot.
Yeah, they do this thing where they bring back legends to do commentary, and then you can obviously tell the legend hasn't watched the show in 20 years.
Yeah,
because they don't know who anybody is, and they don't know any of the rules of how things work now, and so they just will go off on these total rants, and then the commentators next to them just have to try to make up for it. I don't watch a lot of WWE, but I see clips because I watch Botchamania, so I see these things more than anything else from them. That's really hilarious.
Funny. Well, back in the day, Jesse Ventura and oh my God, who's the host of Jeopardy?
The old Alex Trebek.
Him and Alex Trebek were strong arm Men in Black types on the X-Files. For those
inspired casting.
It's such a great. It's the best episode of the show. Anyways. I think he does a backbreaker on the UFO nerd guy or something like that in the episode. It's so good. So yeah, he sees this light and then it starts to move in a downward direction and almost seems to be getting closer. Okay. And when that happens, Michael shouts out, "Wow, Venus is falling." And and as it gets closer, it seems to sort of flatten out almost. I sort of picture it in almost like a thinner football-y sort of shape, you know? Mm-hmm. So they're watching it. And as they watch this thing get closer and come downwards, 3 smaller orbs of light drop from this main big one. And when they do, the big one moves up and disappears. It goes back up and just disappears. The 3 smaller objects, though, then go to hover over the lake that they're sitting by. And the article that I'm getting this from, the case file as it is written, basically says, well, these are obviously under intelligent control.
Right.
So...
yeah, they split off and stay, and yeah. Sure.
Yeah, they're moving like they're run by some sort of intelligence. And supposedly what these things do is they just start going fucking apeshit. These 3 balls of light just start doing zigzag maneuvers. They loop around each other. They go slowly down and then rise back up. They just do all kinds of crazy shit for a little bit.
How far away, how high up is this? I forget. Is this right over the lake, or is it 100 feet in the air?
I think this is over the lake, but far enough away that they can't make out specific details about the objects.
Okay.
So it's still pretty far away, and I think this is a pretty big lake. But they don't give details about the things. I'm going to own up to something real quick. This case file led me to find that there is a 350-page book on this case. So there's probably a lot more details, and maybe, I don't know, revisit it or something. But
Yeah.
it had a bunch of other stuff in it, you know, like there's a lot of discussion of the fallout and investigation. I do believe Project Blue Book gets involved. So there's a
Nice.
bunch of other stuff too that happens. But the core story is not super long. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's why it's appearing here in the grab
I always
bag.
love when an online, like when you're trying to research a case and it's the only stories you can find are like would fill like 2 pages of notes. And
Yeah.
then you find out there's a 600 page tome about
Yeah.
the investigation. It's like how what? How?
Yeah, I feel like too, especially because these are abduction cases. The earlier a case like that is, the more likely you are to find extensive material in a old book about it. You know,
Yeah.
abduction cases just draw people who want to write about, analyze, and draw meaning from those experiences. It draws those people to those cases.
Yeah.
And sometimes just the person who has the experience wants to write about it. There was one story that I ran across when I was looking for stories for this episode that is very interesting and resulted in the abductee writing their own book on the subject. And by the time I was reading that stuff, I was like, this is too big for one episode, you know?
Yeah.
So these things are moving around like crazy. And this is when the objects start to move closer to the 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And now they get together and form a triangle. And they watch as 2 of these objects that are floating there pull back from the 3rd one. And when that happens, Michael says that he hears a sound that is, quote, like 1,000 tuning forks coming presumably from this object.
Okay, so it's kind of vibrating at some frequency.
Yeah.
A big thing. Okay.
So when they split off like this is when they get close contact with the UFO. The one that is left behind, the singular small UFO, then comes and flies overhead of Michael and Janet. And it sits there for a moment and then suddenly shoots up and disappears completely. Then it very suddenly reappears, tilts to one side, like at an angle, and then drops into the lake.
Oh, nice. So we've got a submerged UFO now.
So it's such a crazy. The reason I really wanted to include this one is because of the insane maneuvers that this thing supposedly did. Because it goes on its side, then falls into the lake. A number of minutes pass. It then emerges from the water again and then glides straight back towards these 2 teenagers. And it's just a crazy amount of action that we don't typically get in these stories, and I thought that was cool. So now that this thing is close to them, for real, like actually very close, the kids describe a transparent dome, and inside this dome, they see 2, quote, childlike creatures, so they're small. Michael described these things as having elongated necks, big heads, and no hair. If I remember correctly, I really got to go back and read another. If I remember correctly, this description is closer to. So, like, if you think about the fact that this is only a couple years after the Betty and Barney Hill case, right?
Right.
I think that description, if I'm remembering correctly, and feel free to, let me know in an email if I was wrong, but I think that description matches a little bit of how Betty described the abductors in that case.
That sounds right.
I'm pretty sure, because it's Barney who describes them as like humanoids that are dressed like Nazis. That's another. Honestly, we got to do another Betty and Barney Hill episode, I think.
Yeah, it's a very fertile topic. There's a lot to get into.
We revisited it like a year ago. I'll have another way to bring Benny
Yeah.
and Barney Hill back for sure. Actually, I know exactly when they're coming back. So you go ahead and bookmark that mentally.
Cool.
So these beings, big heads, no hair, long necks, their eyes are big, and they sort of slightly wrap around the sides of these creatures' heads. And these alien creatures watch the teenagers, and Michael, as they're watching him, he apparently leans over and slaps his knee. And
Okay.
when he does that, one of the beings inside the UFO mimics his movement. So he slaps his knee, the alien then slaps its own knee.
I've got a mirror situation here.
Yeah, so this thing is directly overhead now, and it shoots down a beam at the two teenagers. Michael grabs Janet's shoulder and tries to pull them on their backs, like to try and pull them away from this beam. And then Michael describes being suddenly overcome with fear of being kidnapped by something. And in his memory, he screams, "We don't want to go." He sort of vaguely remembers screaming that. And then he also describes how this light beam that was shooting from the craft was so bright that he could see through his hand like it was an X-ray. And this is also always a fun description of UFO tractor beams. They also say that the beam had this quote-unquote liquid feeling to it.
Right.
So when you're in it, you kind of float in the liquid of the beam. You know, it's...
It's like a goo tube as much as it is a beam.
Yeah.
It's like you're going up a big go-gurt.
Yeah. So the next thing they know, it's totally nighttime outside, and they're still there at the dock, and they don't know how much time has passed. Michael looks over at Janet, and he notices that she looks sort of like she's in a trance, and that she's drowsy and disoriented. And so presumably missing time, they have been returned to the dock much later, and as they sort of wake up from this shocked, confused, disoriented state, they hear the sounds of the swim team that had left earlier that day coming back from their meet. And as the team returns, they watch as this UFO moves up into the sky. It flashes a light beam repeatedly a couple times and then just vanishes.
So the swim team saw it, or they just were coming back and at the same time?
I don't think that they saw it. I think that the swim meet team coming back was like... I think the implication is that the swim team coming back is what caused the UFO to leave. So
Gotcha.
the sounds of these people returning is what caused it to leave. I think that's the implication. Doesn't say that explicitly, but that's how I've interpreted it. So what ends up happening is Michael and Janet don't talk about this experience. They spend, in fact, for weeks, they don't talk about this. They don't really know what happened to them. They don't really know what they saw. They're not even sure it did happen. Then they go their separate ways. And they don't really... Michael, the story kind of shifts over to Michael a bit more. He starts to have, like years later, he starts to have dreams, vivid dreams about being kidnapped and abducted, things taking him against his will. And these dreams unnerved him. Then 10 years after that experience, that's when Michael decides to contact the Center for UFO Studies.
Which 10 years later, we would be in
78.
Okay, yeah. So we'd be into the full abduction era at that point.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So this guy, Walter Webb, is the one who's working on the case for CUFOs. And he, of course, what do you expect? He says, tell you what, let's use regressive hypnosis to see what happened to you the night you were abducted.
Oh, of course. Got to use regressive hypnosis.
And the idea is to get to the bottom of these terrible dreams that he's having. So under hypnosis, Michael relives the 1968 abduction. He remembers this beam of light lifting him inside of the UFO. And then he entered and then found himself in a bigger craft, which I think the implication is that maybe it flew up to the mothership that dropped them off.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's in there, he can see Janet, the girl that's with him, lying on a table being examined by these beings. So then these small beings that come over to him, and he's laying there, and they shine light into his eyes. And he looks over and he sees that these beings are also shining light into her eyes, and then they scrape her skin, and then I didn't see what this was exactly in the book, but it says that they took fluids from her body. I think it's blood, but they don't say what fluids were taken. Michael then says he described, quote, "The aliens all looked alike and had those large eyes, a mouth without lips, no ears, and 2 small openings for a nose." He also describes them as having 3 pointed web-like digits for fingers, and that their bodies felt, quote, damp and clammy. I guess that these beings told Michael that they had a mission, and that's why they were there, and their mission was to, quote, make life ours other places.
Okay, so they want... What does that mean?
I don't
make
know.
life ours other places.
That
could mean like we're going to kind of terraform, or like we're going to make your planet like our planet in some way, whether it's societal, beliefs wise, climate, whatever it is. But it also could be something else, you know?
I think that what they're trying to do is make life on Earth more like theirs. Gotcha. It almost reads like an imparting of I almost read it like they're planning on imparting some sort of extraterrestrial knowledge about life.
Gotcha. Okay.
So then they get Janet, and she also gets to go under hypnotic regression. And these seem to run parallel with what Michael was saying. She says that she's on an examining table. She's cold. She feels something pull her hair and then pinch her neck. And it basically describes similar events of beings abducting them. Now, I guess that this investigator for CUFO's web, he went and found other people at the camp who also saw strange lights over the lake on that same night. So they I guess found other people who were willing to corroborate the existence of lights. There were, and I believe 2 of them were employees also at this camp. But beyond that, it's a pretty early case of alien abduction. It's only a couple years after Betty and Barney Hill, but it doesn't get reported until, like you said, at the height of the 70s abductee stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, Michael and Janet, the Buff Ledge abduction. That's our first story. It's pretty typical, but what made it stand out to me is just the fact that this UFO goes absolutely bonkers in their experience. And yeah, I don't know. I guess there were other people at the camp who saw it.
Okay.
So that's part 1.
Aerial maneuvers.
Our next story is from 1980. So this actually, it relates back to stories a little bit that we have talked about on the show, because this is in November and December of 1980 in Britain. And this is when they're having a big UFO flap.
Right. Okay.
And the main one that we would know from that particular run of UFO encounters would be the Rendlesham Forest incident.
Nice.
Which we discussed that years ago. So
yeah,
which
that was an early one.
It's, I believe, a UFO landing on a NATO base, right?
Yeah.
So it's a pretty wild story, and this is an incident that happens around the same flap. So this is an alien abduction that happened in the town of Todmorden, West Yorkshire, which is in the center of this UFO activity area that I do believe we've brought up on the show when we've talked about this flap, because it gets called UFO Alley.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's this police constable named Alan Godfrey, and he's on patrol. It's November 28th, 1980. It's nighttime, and it's the early hours of the morning, like right before dawn. And he's driving along the road just at the edge, the outskirts of Todmorden. And apparently what he's doing out there is they'd gotten a report that there were some cows that had been reported missing. These cows would later be found once the sun was up, and they found that apparently these cows were just suddenly and unexpectedly relocated in a totally different field that was soaked with rain, and there were no hoof marks that could show that these cows had traveled from their original location, wherever that was. So they didn't have any way to verify that the cows had traveled there by their own hooves. There were no prints. So perhaps they were en masse abducted by UFOs. Maybe.
Okay. So do we have any idea how far away they were?
I don't. It doesn't say in this particular account of this story, unfortunately. But I guess it's far enough away to make it weird enough to include in the story. So they get found later, but this guy, Constable Godfrey, he is about to give up because it's early in the morning and he hasn't found these cows. So he's getting ready to head back to headquarters when he notices this large mass a few hundred yards ahead of him. Initially, he takes it as a bus that carries these workers into to their jobs in town. He knew it was around 5 a.m. that this bus would come through. So that's what he thinks it might be at first. But he gets closer to it, and then he realizes that it's weirder than a bus. It gets described as a fuzzy oval that rotated at such speed and hovered so low over the otherwise deserted highway that it was causing the bushes by the side of it to shake.
Wow. Okay.
So this thing is low, hovering, and its presence is making stuff around it shake.
What is the fuzzy part of it?
I think like indistinct more than like, tiny hairs or anything like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this cop stops and he leans over his car to get out his sketch pad that he uses to make notes about, accidents on the road, and he draws the UFO. And that's, of course, going to be an important part of his case when it finally gets reported. So he turns around and he sees that there's a huge burst of light. And then suddenly he's just in his car and he's driving on the same road. He doesn't see the UFO anywhere. So something happened, but he doesn't remember what. He turns around after he kind of comes back to his senses, and he goes to the spot where he had watched this UFO hovering, and he found that, it had been raining, so it was very wet. But at this particular location, there's a large circular patch that was much more dry, and it kind of had a swirl pattern to it. So then he leaves and heads back to the police station, and he realizes upon returning that there was missing time. It wasn't a ton of missing time. He wasn't gone for, hours. It was something like 15 minutes that he was actually out of it.
So it could totally be road blindness. Just fucking he was jamming too hard.
Yeah, very well could be. So at first, Godfrey's sort of worried that if he were to report this, he would get made fun of.
Sure.
But he finds out that there was a driver who was on the exact same road, Burnley Road, just 3 miles down from where he was at, that reported seeing a brilliant white object, and this guy called Todmorden police. So now Godfrey's not alone in having this sighting. And this person's sightings match up with the time that Godfrey would have seen it. And then he also finds out that there's an adjacent police force in another town, I think Halifax, that they had been out doing something, and they also saw this brilliant blue-white glow that kind of came from the sky and down into the valley near where Todmorden is. And this is, again, it kind of matches up with right before Godfrey has his weird close encounter in missing time.
So at least there was some. We can reasonably assume there was some sort of weird light in the sky at that night.
It seems that way.
Whatever it is could be anything, but the light seems to have happened.
Yeah,
cool.
So he has two totally disparate accounts that help confirm that he saw something. So now he decides to file an official report. And he's a little blindsided because when he does this, the next week, the police then take his story and release it to the local newspaper. Which I guess he's surprised by this. I don't really know why. The article doesn't explain why he's, so surprised by this, but they make it sound like he didn't maybe there wasn't communication about releasing it, and it just gets put out. Which also you kind of have to think that maybe the police force that he's working with, and he's the one having the sighting, there would be some reservations about their officers, seeing UFOs, right? Like maybe.
Yeah.
So this story gets out, and that's when ufologists start to get involved, and an investigation starts to happen. So they get this UFO group that doesn't get named in the article, but they're from Manchester apparently, and they're the ones that are going to be investigating. So Godfrey does not remember anything that happened during the 15 or so minute period that he has missing time. And as he gets talked to by people from the investigation about this, he kind of gets more confused about what happened surrounding his encounter with the UFO. So there's also this, physical evidence that he is able to turn up. That's interesting. So he's got his police issue boots, right? And he finds that they're both split at the sole, and they take this to mean that he may have been dragged along the floor somewhere and that they had caught on something.
Okay. I can understand that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could just be shoddy boots.
It could be shoddy boots. Now, now that the ufologists are involved, also, he starts to report that he actually had seen strange things when he was a child as well. And
of course you did.
And as a kid, he'd experienced missing time. So the ufologists are like, okay, you sound like you have experienced alien abductions, right? Or UFO abductions, at least. So he then agrees to be put under hypnotic regression by a Manchester psychiatrist. This is 8 months after the initial incident occurs. And he goes through the hypnotic regression. He has multiple different therapists that he gets involved with, and they videotape his recall sessions, which I believe you can still find online. Now, I guess this first doctor refused to let the UFO group record the first session, but later ones he just allowed them to do that with the different doctors, presumably.
Okay.
Now he has a weird testimony during these recorded sessions. He never really seems to be certain of what happened to him. He, in one part of the story, he talks about how the bright light stops his car engine, and then his radio and police handset both get filled up with static and start to fizz out. And then suddenly he's just engulfed by a blinding light and he loses consciousness. And then he recalls being inside a big strange room that felt kind of like a house, less a spaceship. And inside this house room, there's a large black dog.
Okay.
Now, he's not studied by aliens. Not as far as we can tell. He's actually analyzed by a heavily bearded human-looking man who was communicating to him telepathically. And this human telepath with the big beard communicates without speaking to Godfrey and explains that his name is Yosef. And Godfrey claims that the clothing that this man wore was, quote unquote, very biblical in nature. So,
is this going to be fucking biblical aliens? Is that what we're doing here?
Here, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Yosef, this human being operating some sort of UFO, also had assistant beings with him. And the assistant beings that Godfrey describes are these small creatures that look like robots. And he describes them as, quote, being the size of a 5-year-old lad. And that they all had a head shaped like a lamp. And apparently, these things are kind of similar in a way to a gray alien, but robotic.
Okay. I feel like that's been Gray's being some sort of partially mechanical being has come up before somewhere. I feel like I've heard that somewhere.
I feel like a mechanical being traveling with aliens is not unheard of, especially in some of the weirder contact cases of the 70s and even 60s. But I think what made this one stand out for me is we have this old man from the times of Christ himself who has alien helpers that are robots. And that's a new one for me. And I guess Godfrey asked him questions, but we don't know what the questions were. But this man tells him that they know each other and that they're going to have another encounter later on. Now, he doesn't get any of the rigmarole you would expect from an alien abduction. He doesn't get probed. He doesn't get skin samples taken. They just, I guess, talk a little bit. And it's not clear, like, it's not a very coherent story, apparently, the way he describes it. There's like still periods of missing memory from that night, supposedly. Mm-hmm. And he describes all these like weird hybrid things of like classic UFO stuff, but also like human mythology.
Okay.
So go ahead.
You said you went to a bunch of different therapists and stuff to do this hypnotic regression. Is some of the jumble coming from different accounts, or is this all one kind of narrative that he, like I'm trying to figure out how much the different therapists may be kind of guiding him in different directions throughout different sessions,
Yeah, I think that the confusion comes from him not necessarily the fact that he had all these hypnotic regressions and doctors that he worked with. I think it's actually the way the story makes it sound is that he himself isn't quite sure what happened. And so it's always a confused recalling. You know, you get these stories where people are put under hypnotic regression and suddenly they very vividly remember the terror of the alien abduction experience very, you know, with detail. Here it sounds like it's not detail. It's just like half remembered weird things, like the Yosef stuff. And I guess he believes, so at the end of the day, Godfrey believes that he encountered a UFO, but never could quite come to a conclusion about whether it was a dream, whether it was a literal abduction by something, all the experiences he had while he was on there. He can't quite make out what happened to him. Like, he believes that he saw a UFO, whether or not, you know, the Yosef stuff was reality or a dream, he never was able to determine.
Fair. Okay.
So I should also say that this particular case is from Jenny Randles, who's writing in the UFO casebook, and I guess actually spoke directly with Godfrey. So before the regressive hypnosis sessions were begun, Randles had written to Godfrey, or had written about this particular story in 1981 in the Flying Saucer Review, and had written it in with a different identity to protect Godfrey, just like a different name and stuff. And, you know, this was an attempt to protect him, right? But apparently because it had leaked out so fast, people probably pieced it together between the Flying Saucer Review article and what had come out in the local papers.
Sure.
And Randles refuses to talk to these tabloid reporters who get involved, and they end up let me read this part directly. This is what Randles says. A tabloid reporter traced the witness and devoted a front-page banner headline article to the story, read by millions over the Sunday lunch, which led to the officer being called to explain himself before his superiors. He was forced to undergo medical investigation to determine his status, but was pronounced psychologically fit and healthy. Yet after some years feeling that he would never be allowed to forget his sighting, he took advice to honorably resign over an unrelated physical injury incurred during an incident in which he bravely intervened to avert a crime. Todd Morden, both before 1980 and in the years since, has been a hotbed of alien activity, with several other major encounters having been investigated, including another abduction of a truck driver from Burnley Road, which is the same road that he was on. So this case, the way I understand it from Randles' writing, ruined Godfrey's career.
Yeah, that's kind of the fear whenever someone comes forward with their UFO encounter, is like, oh, I'm going to become a laughing stock and get discredited and fired and ruin my life.
Yeah, it's another one of those things where it's hard to determine. It reads a little more truthful, you know. In that, like, they believe something happened to them. And were afraid initially to speak out until they had two corroborating callers to the police station, one of which was another police station. And so, but what I find kind of crazy about it is how the story got out despite Godfrey apparently not wanting that, and because Randles seems to have tried to protect his identity. And it almost reads like, all right, look, I'm gonna put on my tinfoil hat, because I like to put on my tinfoil hat with this stuff, and now I can't help but read some of it. You know, we talked about how reading these certain UFO cases with the post MK Ultra knowledge thing, it almost reads like he witnessed something he wasn't supposed to. The fact that he can only hazily recall certain things, and they're all weird and have this like mythology thing intertwining with like some of the stuff that he seems to know about alien lore in ufology, it almost reads like he was, he saw something he shouldn't have, and then there was a little smear campaign that got him in trouble with his job.
Yeah, they had to discredit him.
So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'm saying that if this were some sort of weird psyop situation where he saw something he shouldn't have, again, you also have to remember that the whole Rendlesham Forest incident, which is what this era of UFOs in this area is leading up to, involves fucking NATO. Like it's got connections to powerful people, right? Like in a way, a bit like indirectly in a way, but like it's still like seeing that in the story makes me, scratch my chin a little. I can't help but try and like put on a little bit of a paranoid interpretation of stuff like this anymore. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe that's ridiculous, but
I mean, like you could see it going a couple ways. Like it whether the cluttered recollection of it throughout all of these hypnotic aggression, which like hypnotic aggression is debunked. It's hokum. It's not anything. But like it gives some credence that he isn't confidently saying, oh yeah, I had, gray aliens said I was a special boy. Right. And, like right. He is basically just like, yeah, I think something happened, but I'm not even sure what it is. And so it being a real thing that he saw, that's not what he's recollecting, and that it got leaked despite the fact that he didn't want it to. You could easily connect those dots. Like you're absolutely in the right, like you're justified in connecting those dots. I think.
I don't think, unless somebody in the UFO community is looking into it to this day, I don't think we'll ever have an answer to whether, like,
yeah.
Not that there's any good answers out there for something like that. Like, do we have an answer to what happened to Antonio Villas-Boas? No, and we will never.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an interesting story. I got one more for you.
Okay.
That was interesting. And it's another one that stood out to me to cap this off. So this is in the Cascade Mountains near Mount St. Helens, Washington, in the United States. It's Monday, March 1st, 1999. And New Forks, the National UFO Reporting Center, gets a call on its hotline. And this is a person who says, I'm an employee in the forestry industry for Washington State. And they leave them with this message of, basically, there's a team of forestry workers, and they saw something happen back in February of 1999. And they watch as a disc-like object comes down and carries an elk away.
Okay. So I've heard of cow abductions, but
yeah,
elk?
But this is getting ridiculous. Peter Davenport, then director of New Fork. Definitely a name that's come up on this show before. He gets in touch with the people who leave the phone call and the people who supposedly witnessed it. And New Fork is not exactly an investigative UFO group. So what he does is he talks to Robert Fairfax, who is the director of investigations of the Washington State chapter of the Mutual UFO Network. And MUFON, of course, does their investigations, right? So at least at this time.
MUFON.
So Davenport and Fairfax meet up. They end up going to the location where this supposedly happened, and the investigation begins. Now, they interview these 14 witnesses, these men who work out there in forestry, to try and get a hold of an idea, a grip on what happened here. They also are taken to see the body of a dead adult elk. They also find that they're taken to go see a dead pregnant cow that's found beside a logging road on March 1st, which would be the same day that the incident was like called in. and it's only within a few miles of where this incident occurred.
Okay.
So this is the actual summary of events as submitted by Davenport and Fairfax. So here's what they say. On Thursday, February 25th, 1999, at just a few minutes before noon, 3 forestry workers who were planting seedling trees in the mountains of Washington state witnessed a small disc-shaped object slowly drift over a nearby ridge to their south and descend into the valley to the north of their position. The object descended silently with what seemed to the witnesses a purposeful manner, exhibiting a slight wobble to its flight. The 3 workers at first thought the object was some kind of parachute that was drifting and descending, but they quickly realized that their initial impression was not correct. Hence, they shouted to their 11 coworkers nearby, who were working on the north-facing hillside, and all 14 members of the work crew watched the object for an estimated 3 to 5 minutes. Within seconds of their first observation of the object, the witnesses became aware that the object was traveling generally in the direction of a herd of elk that they had been watching all morning. They continued to watch as the object proceeded toward the herd until it succeeded in getting quite close to the animals. The animals apparently remained unaware of the object's presence until it was within a very short distance of the herd. Suddenly, the animals bolted, most of them running up the slope to their east. However, one adult animal was seen by the witnesses to separate itself from the herd and run or trot generally to the north, perhaps along a logging road. The witnesses report that at this point, the object quickly moved directly above the lone elk and seemed to lift it off the ground, although no visible means of support of the animal was evident to the observers. The witnesses added that shortly after lifting the elk off the ground, the object seemed to begin to wobble to a more pronounced degree than it had exhibited earlier. In addition, as the object appeared to increase its altitude, the elk, which was suspended upright below the disc, rotated slowly beneath it and appeared to be getting closer to the ventral surface of the disc. They also commented that the object seemed to increase in size slightly after it had picked up the animal. With the elk suspended below it, the object began to ascend slowly up a clear-cut slope to the east. However, the witnesses watched it apparently brush the tops of nearby trees to the east, at which point it reversed its course and proceeded to the west. You doing okay?
This is a cartoon. Like it's a UFO sneaking up on a herd of elk,
Yep.
grabbing one in its tractor beam, which may or may not be Go-Gurt like the last ones, and then the ship gets bigger and starts wobbling once it picks up the elk. It barely makes it up over a mountain and then stops and goes in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Like this is someone's test footage for their like animation degree, you know?
Yeah. You can hear Matt Berry voiceover saying like, it singles the elk out and its shitty leg.
Yeah.
The elk are furious and thus glow red.
Does that still exist somewhere?
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Okay. It's so fucking funny.
It continues from here, Niall. The object, it executed a 360-degree turn to the left and may have gained some walked away. And may have gained some slight altitude in the process, the witnesses thought. After the object had completed its turn and was once again proceeding in a generally easterly direction, it began ascending very quickly at what seemed to the witnesses to be a rather steep angle. It continued to ascend and simply disappeared from sight of the witnesses. The witnesses stated that once the object had started to ascend and had climbed to an altitude above their vantage point, they no longer could see the animal suspended below the craft. So either it dropped it or it's just taking it to where it can never return from.
Yeah, maybe it got into the craft and was like absorbed, or just like there is like a learner's permit-esque vibe to this one, where it feels like the aliens are like kind of doing shit, and so just dropping an elk from hundreds of feet in the air. Does fit into kind of the devil may care attitude of like when you first get your learner's permit and are driving for the first time by yourself.
They didn't notice that the UFO had a big student driver sticker slapped on its back.
Yeah. Drive slowly. It's a student driving.
And it does note that the witnesses say that they think that what happened to the elk is that it was taken into the craft. but they couldn't see a door. So like, there's no way to know if that's what happened. It's far enough away now too that they can't quite tell. So, but at the very least, they didn't see an elk fall from hundreds of feet up in the air. So
they didn't find an elk-shaped mist going across the countryside.
No, they did not find the elk smear anywhere. And then so that's really the story. Like it says that they saw that the herd of elk kind of remained in the same area and were all kind of huddled around one another, but didn't leave. And that's the end of this story. Supposedly a UFO, forestry workers just watch as this thing abducts it. They just see it happen and it leaves.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a weird one.
Yeah, it's our first straight up animal abduction.
I think that I want to double check this. Oh no, okay. So there I couldn't remember. There was one of these entries on the UFO casebook files where there were a couple that's like it tells you like was there contact, was there abduction, was there media, etc. And there's a couple here where abduction is just a question mark. And I couldn't remember if this was one of them. But no, it does count this one as being an official abduction by a UFO. So yeah, those are my 3 weird little UFO stories, Niall. Those are the ones that I brought to you today. I do think that out of the 3, the first story of Buff Ledge, like I didn't have time to read 350 pages of a book, but now I'm curious because one exists.
Yeah.
So maybe we could revisit that sometime in a more full capacity, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, what are you going to do? You're just going to sit there and watch an elk get abducted. Like that's the whole incident.
I now just want to know if there are other animals that have been abducted. Like animal abductions is a whole new fucking avenue.
It's interesting you should say that. Are you ready for the big question?
Yeah, fuck, I'm ready.
With aliens moving on from abducting cattle to apparently elk, at least within the last 26 years or so, what do you think will be the hot new animal abduction trend of our modern era?
Let me think here for a second. Because, like, there's a lot of good options. You could go big, you could go small, you could go super specific. I kind of love the idea of doing something really out of pocket and, like, aliens abducting, like, deep sea creatures is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Like, if they just, like, take a fucking blue whale out of the ocean.
Whales were exactly where my brain was going.
Okay, well, and we all want. Well, is that just because we both like whales in the sky?
That's also where my brain went, because I was gonna say that these are aliens who are time travelers, and so are Gojira, the band that created the Whales in the Sky album, and they are time travelers who put out music to warn us of future events, and this future event happens to be whales in the sky over a blue planet. That was where
What
it's
I
like
mean,
we used to we used to live together long enough that we were like basically common law married. This is the result of that.
I used to Gojira was my college writing essays band because it's like I would just like bang out essays in one night, including my fucking 20-page music history thesis thing, and just like crank Gojira because it's just like pummeling and consistent, you know. But I haven't listened to them I almost haven't listened to them since. Like there was some time in when we first moved to Indy together that I think I listened to them a little bit because Scott, friend of the show, was a big fan. But it's been so long. I should go check out Gojira. Does it still hit?
I listened to World to Come recently, the song off of From Mars to Sirius. And I thought that song was really nice, listening to it in recent times. We brought it all the way back to music, too. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. It's coming full circle.
Is there another music-related animal like that we could tie it into this theme from this episode? Because, like, whales is technically your pick.
I straight up went to Frightened Rabbit, that band. Yeah. Not like
I thought of the
R.I.P. the
Eagles.
singer. Yeah, there you go. The Eagles too.
I fucking hate the Eagles.
I watched a documentary about them. They are two of them are fucking lunatics. Wow.
I feel like between me speaking out about my disinterest in Metallica and me hating Eagles, I'm about to start getting us sent hate mail. It's just for which I apologize.
Look, you're really alienating like 40 to 65. You know,
That's true. Frightened Rabbit though, that's
appealing specifically to like depressed 30-year-olds right now.
Yeah. Didn't Tom York
It's-
do like a song with them or something? Am I remembering that correctly?
I have no idea.
might be
I just
thinking of
remember
something
there was somebody that would come to the record store that I used to go to in Muncie that was like really advocating for one of their albums. So I listened, and the album was pretty good. I don't remember which one it was. I vaguely recognize the cover, but I haven't thought about that band. I don't know why that's what came into my head today. I haven't thought about that band in a decade.
Yeah. Have you ever heard a rabbit scream?
I think I have.
Okay.
I think so.
So these UFOs are going to be picking up rabbits and they're going to be screaming, basically.
Yeah, really just fucking angry and upset.
Ooh,
Yeah.
which reminds me, speaking of funny animal noises, have you ever heard turtles fuck?
Yes.
That's
I have.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Turtles will just, they'll be smashing and you'll just hear them go,
Yeah.
So maybe maybe the UFOs could take an interest in turtles mid-coitus.
Uh-huh. Well, you take up they use their tractor beam to take up two mid-coital.
Right.
And they make those noises out into the world as they're being like slowly raised up into the UFO.
The coitotoidals.
Yeah. And we can wrap that all up into music again by Trampled by Turtles.
Trampled by
There you go.
Turtles. Yeah, we're going to be out and about. There'll be a huge UFO flap. You'll hear the chorus sounds of turtles fucking in the sky. And then when the UFOs come back and return them, that's when they'll drop them on us and we'll be trampled by turtles.
Yeah.
So that's
Who just did an album with Alan Sparhawk from Low. If you want to add Hawks into this thing.
I don't think I've ever listened to Trampled by Turtles. Maybe once.
I had a weird thing. They were weirdly popular when it was like my first year in college, and there was a time where it was that Trampled by Turtles and Larry and His Flask.
Oh my God.
Were like kind of
Jesus
Larry and His
Christ.
Flask was borderline punk adjacent,
Yeah.
bluegrassy stuff, and Trampled by Turtles kind of got like grouped in with that. So I listened to them for like, I don't know, 3 months in college one time.
I think around that time my sister was getting into Trampled by Turtles.
That would make sense.
And yeah.
No shade to your sister.
No,
Your sister's-
no, by no means. It's not at all. I'm loosely reaching out in the dark for connections to the band, and I can't remember if I listened to them or not,
Yeah.
to be honest.
So,
But I
anyway,
like them in
I
this
listened.
use here.
I listened to the Alan Sparhawk album and it was good.
Nice.
So like, hey, Trampled by Turtles.
Hey, save
good
it for World of Weird, our bonus show on our Patreon at patreon.com/itgetsweird. Would you?
Oh, hey, yeah. Hey, and for people who are missing it, I am getting back into my Godzilla Watch
Nice.
series. So
Hell yeah.
there will be new updates on that. A couple Blu-rays were ordered, and so updates coming soon on the Patreon.
Nice. Well, speaking of Patreon, do we want to hit the business real quick?
Yeah, let's go ahead and take care of some business. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, we're at IGW Podcast.
You can follow us on Facebook.com/itgetsweirdpodcast.
And we're on all your favorite podcatchers. If you listen to podcasts somewhere, look up It Gets Weird, and we're almost certainly there.
We're at Blue Sky at It Gets Weird. Check us out there. I'm making the switch. I've been talking about us being on Blue Sky for like probably months now, so I guess I can't call it making the switch at this point. But go ahead and check us out at Blue Sky. That's where we're going to try and focus our social media. Also, twitch.tv/itgetsweird. I'm still playing Elden Ring Night Rain with Colin when we get the chance. It has been so much fucking fun. Having a great time playing that with our good buddy. So give us a follow there. If you want to email us, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about fetishes, but we will take that,
Sure.
provided it's appropriate for the show. Just let us know how we should address you if you email us. Send us a story. Send us your thoughts. If I got something wrong, if I messed up some of the shit I said, hey, feel free to let me know. I want to be right. If I'm wrong, I want to be right. You know, Niall?
And if I'm wrong, I want to be left alone.
That's right. And two wrongs don't make a right. But No Means No made the album wrong.
It's true.
So give us an email, itgetsweirdpodcast@gmail.com. But most importantly, if you want to support us, and I know if you're listening at this far into the episode, you probably do. Patreon.com/itgetsweird. Tons of bonus content. We have a $1 tier. $1 tier is the tip tier. You're just saying, hey, thanks for doing what you do. Here's $1. You don't get anything except the satisfaction of sending $1 to your favorite podcast. But at the $2 tier and the $5 tier, you get a bunch of bonus content. At $2, you get It Gets Weird TV. Right now, Niall and I are discussing season 3 of The X-Files. It's a blast. It's a lot of fun. And you have a huge back catalog even at the $2 tier. But if you want the most bang for your buck, you're going to want to check out that $5 tier where we have a show called World of Weird where, kind of mentioned at the end there, we talk about whatever we want. And usually that means music, movies, some stuff related to,
Sonic lore.
Sonic lore. I did do a whole Sonic thing in the last episode. We talk about whatever the hell we want. And it's a lot of fun. And that's at the $5 tier. And you get that in conjunction with all the material on the $2 tier. So you get a huge amount of a giant backlog of material that we have been putting on Patreon for years now. So there's no better place, no better way to support us than patreon.com/itgetsweird at the $5 tier. But whether you donate to the $2 tier or the $5 tier, you get access to the main show 2 days early on Friday instead of Sunday on your own private Patreon feed. And you get access to the Discord where we're hanging out, chatting with our listeners directly. They talk to us about UFOs and all kinds of stuff in there. So please check out our Patreon. We really would appreciate your support. If you can't donate, times are tough, money's tight, we get it. If you can't donate, the least you could do, tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell your congressman all about It Gets Weird podcast.
Tell your fetish sub forum.
Tell your fetish sub forum, hey, I got this great podcast. Folks, we can take a break here from, our niche fetish to talk about some great podcasting.
Yeah, exactly.
Please.
All right. Thank you all for listening to the show. Thank you for all of the support you've given us. We really do appreciate it. This has been It Gets Weird, and I've been Niall.
And I'm Kyle, signing out.